I'm still trying to process what I just read. I would be shocked at this point if this is not 5 stars. Hey, how's it going? My name is Gabby. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to another reading vlog. This reading vlog is going to be a special one because it's going to be episode 1 in a new series on my channel. In each episode of this video series, I'm going to be trying to get a bingo on the bingo board. So I actually had this idea from my friend Meg on booktube. I'll link her channel down below, but her channel's name is Meg with Books. She had this one video where she asked people on her Patreon to submit different prompts for a bingo board, but then she had no control over what ended up on the bingo board, and so I asked my sister to do the same. And so as you can see, we have a 5x5 bingo board here with 25 different prompts. All of these prompts were submitted by the lovely humans that are on my Patreon, and I had my sister go through that post and like look through all the prompts and try to figure out which ones were the best. And so my sister, Rachel, she was the one who ended up designing this bingo board and hand selecting the prompts herself that ended up on this bingo board. And so in the year of 2026, I thought it would be really fun to have a new video series on my channel where I basically go line by line and try to get a bingo for every single line on this board. And so in this first video, we are going to be focused on these top 5 prompts right here. I will put a closer look at the bingo board on the screen right now if you wanted to like take a look at what some of the upcoming prompts will be, because I think this is going to be such a fun video series for me to work on this year. There's a lot of prompts, especially like towards the bottom here, that really scare me, so we're going to save those for later this year. But the very first prompt that we're going to be looking at is this one in the top corner that says read a book with a number in the title. You know, some of these prompts, it was actually really tricky for me to figure out like what I wanted to read, but for this one, it was really easy because I knew that I wanted to read How to Kill a Guy in 10 Dates. This one is a new horror romance book that really intrigues me. It's actually described as like a slasher meets a rom-com, which I know I've been talking about this time and time again, but like I am so here for horror and romance getting mixed together. This book has been on my radar for a while and I've been really anticipating it, so I knew that I wanted to get to it in this video. The next prompt that we're going to be looking at is this one that says read a book that has a main character or an author with the same name as your middle name. And this is one that I did decide to tweak just a little bit because in the interest of like internet safety, I thought maybe it's not the best idea for me to be putting my middle name out on the internet. So instead, I just decided to go with my first name. And I thought it would still be a challenge anyway, you know, because Gabby or like Gabriella is not that common of a name. Or at least in like all of these years that I've been a reader, I can only think of a handful of authors that are named Gabby or characters that are named Gabby. You know, one of the only authors that came to mind is Gabrielle Zevin, because Gabrielle Zevin is the same author as Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow and The Storied Life of A.J. Fikry, which is like one of my favorite books of all time. And so I picked up this book from the library elsewhere, but because this one is described as being like a middle grade, like I don't even think it's young adult, I think it's middle grade. I read the first chapter of this and I was like, damn, like I don't really know if this is gonna be my thing. So I wanted to do some research to like look into other authors named Gabby, and I came across 2 other books that were available at my library from authors named Gabby. One of them is this book called Juliet Takes a Breath by Gabby Rivera, and then this other one is a book called Kiss Me Maybe by Gabriela Gamez. And it was so cool to find these books at my library because I have never heard of these books or these authors in my life. I believe that this book, Juliet Takes a Breath, I think this one is like a young adult contemporary, but this one does sound like it could be good because it says we're following a closeted Puerto Rican baby from the Bronx. But I think after looking more into it, I want to go with this one, Kiss Me Maybe, because this one is a sapphic romance between these 2 women, and after looking into it more, the main character for this book is actually asexual, because if you didn't know, I'm also asexual, and the fact that this author's name is Gabriella and there's a character that's asexual, I was like, okay, like I need to get into this one. So I thought it was very cool that I'm going to be reading a book that I've never even heard of for this prompt, and I hope it's amazing. Okay, the next prompt on the bingo board is to read a book that has an alliteration in the title. So alliteration in the title could be anything that just has like double letters, you know, it could be like Gone Girl. And for this prompt, I have 2 different books that I might go with. I'm not sure which one I'm more in the mood to read, but I do have The Elsewhere Express. This one's got the double E thing happening here. And this is one that I've been really curious about because this is from the same author as Watermoon, and this one has been described as like a new book that's like a cozy fantasy that I might be interested in reading, like I don't know. So this is one that I'm thinking about reading for this prompt, but then I also do have Half His Age by Jeanette McCurdy, and this one has the alliteration here with the half and the his. And this is one that I've been really excited but also kind of terrified to read because I've heard that this book is a bit controversial because this book is about this like young girl that's like lusting after this man who's her teacher, I believe. So I do know that the subject matter is a bit controversial in this one, but I'm just so so curious because I really like Jeanette McCurdy's writing. And then the next prompt is one that says, read a book that gives off the same vibes as the last song you listened to. And this is another one that I had to look into last night, but the last song that I've listened to is this one called Headlights by In Color. And this song is my obsession right now. Like, it is literally so good. I actually discovered this song like maybe 2 months ago because of my sister. Like, she sent it to me and she was like, yo, have you heard this song? She said she thought I would like it because she said it reminds her of the group called The Wildlife, which is like one of my favorite bands. And I just love this song so much. Like, I'm really, really obsessed with it. Keep driving with your headlights off. So I was thinking, I was like, okay, so the song is called Headlights. The song is about driving with your headlights off. I was like, what book would I choose for this? Part of me wanted to choose this book called Some Kind of Famous because I was like, there's a truck on the cover. And so I know the truck does have headlights, but that kind of felt like a reach because I was like, there's no headlights on the actual cover of this book. So I wasn't sure if that would qualify this one. And so instead I was looking through my Goodreads. I was like digging through all of the book covers that are on my TBR. I was looking at my library and like what my library had available. And I realized that there was this thriller called Run on Red. This one's still been on my TBR for a number of years and my library had the ebook available. So I was like, oh my gosh, let's read this one because if you look on this cover, there are headlights in her rear view mirror. And I was like, this would be perfect. So I don't really know what this thriller is about. I just downloaded it to my Kindle from my library and we're gonna be reading this one. And then the final prompt for this video is going to be read a book that was released the month you were born, which if you didn't know, I'm a Capricorn. I was born in January. And I thought this was perfect actually because, you know, I'm filming this in the month of February, but like there were so many new releases that just came out last month in the month of January. So I was like, how perfect. I feel like I had so many different books to choose from, but the two books that I'm leaning towards the most for this video are The Future Saints by Ashley Winstead, as well as Is This a Cry for Help by Emily Austen. These are two new books that just published in the month of January that I've had arcs, you know, like sitting around for that I really want to get to. I know that the Emily Austen one is going to be really heavy and maybe have like the potential to break me, so I might actually save this one for a future video. And so I'm thinking I'm going to lean more towards wanting to read The Future Saints for this video because Ashley Winstead is an author that I've loved in the past. And this one just sounds so interesting because it's about a band in California. It sounds like it's going to have some like Daisy Jones and the Six vibes to it, so I think I might read this one. So those are all the 5 books that I'm hoping to read in this video. Hopefully it goes well, and hopefully this is just the first video of a series of 5 videos that I'm going to be working on in 2026. Later tonight, Rachel and Obed are going to be coming over to the house because we're going to be having a bit of a Super Bowl party here at the house. The Bad Bunny concert is going to be happening tonight. It's the Benito Bowl. And so I can't wait for that because me and Rachel and Obed, we're all really big fans of Bad Bunny. So let's go ahead and get this vlog started.
Algo espectacular. Esa boquita y ese flow que me mata. Tus amigas dicen que eres bien sata. El color de tu encaje nunca lo vamos a olvidar. Yeah. Severo vuelo aquí con mi azafata. Tremendo chile y inhalando la mata. Baby, no me digas que lo chimba con el.
Yes, I knew we'd start with this one.
Conecta como Bluetooth, gourmet como cordon blue. Quiero ver la curva, baby, no apague la luz, que no es necesario. Y en el barrio habrá más chimba, pero nunca como tú. Nadie a mí me ha visto como tú lo haces. Ya con los demonios se hicieron las paces. Hacer como tú solamente se nace.
So yesterday ended up being a really great day because it was Super Bowl Sunday, aka Benito Bowl. Dude, Bad Bunny was everything. I was so excited to see Bad Bunny perform and he did so good. And when he brought out the little football at the end that said "Together We Are America," like dude, I was in tears. It was beautiful. It was a really great halftime show. And then it was also pretty cool because the Seattle Seahawks ended up winning the Super Bowl. I mean, I'm really not into football myself, but it was still really cool to see like my local, you know, Washington team win the Super Bowl, especially because that has not happened yet since I've been living in Washington. So like that was a really cool day. Also, another update is that this last weekend, my friend Brittany ended up driving up and coming over, and me, Brittany, and my mom, we ended up finishing watching season 6 of Supernatural all together. We watched 7 episodes over the weekend, and like holy shit, you know, because I think the last time I updated you, I was like, season 6 is like okay, it's just not going as well, and I still stand by that. I think the beginning of season 6 is a little bit slow, but like oh my god, the ending of season 6 was so good. We watched the episode that was called The French Mistake, and like if you know, you know, that is like gotta be one of the god tier best episodes of Supernatural that I've ever seen. It was just so good, and Dean and Cass literally have me by the throat right now. So yeah, Supernatural is going very well again. I can't wait to start on season 7 soon. I'm actually here at the house today because my mom ended up getting wisdom tooth surgery this morning. She's coming down off the anesthesia, so I wanted to stick around. And I do have a reading update because I actually just finished listening to the first book book for this video, which was Run on Red. I actually started reading this book last night and I got like 40% of the way into this one last night. The audiobook's pretty short. It's only about like 7.5 hours. And then this morning, you know, while I was in the kitchen making my breakfast, I've just been listening to this one all morning, and now it's about 1 o'clock in the afternoon and I already finished listening to it. You know, I would have checked in at the halfway point if I had anything to say about this book at all, but unfortunately this was not the thriller for me, and I don't think this book was very good. I'm probably gonna end up giving this one 2 stars, and like, to be honest, the only reason why I finished this one was because it was a very quick audiobook and I knew I could get through it very quickly even though I wasn't enjoying it, which maybe that was not the way to go, but also like this book really did fit in perfectly for like the prompt that I was reading it for, you know, because I chose this one for the song Headlights. That's like one of my favorite songs right now, and the way that I started underlining every single time the book would mention headlights, it was ridiculous. Like, I stopped underlining after like 10 times. And so in this story, we're following this protagonist named Liv, and she has this best friend named Laura, and they're both on the road together. They're heading towards this bonfire. They notice that somebody's kind of like driving too closely behind them, and they keep seeing the headlights in the mirror, and they're starting to get a little freaked out that like something's going on. We learn about this character named Ava, and it says that she had gone missing at Coffin Creek 3 years earlier, and she went to the same University of Idaho that both of these girls currently go to. They didn't know this girl, and everybody's kind of like assuming that this girl is dead, but then while they're on the road in the opening chapter, they notice the same truck keeps pulling up behind them and following them on the road, and then they eventually notice that the 2 guys that are in the truck, they both have masks on their face, and so they really start to freak out and start to think something's going on. You know, this book honestly just felt like a non-stop, you know, like action scene, because I swear the majority of this book is just these 2 characters on the run, on the road, trying to get away from these guys in this truck. And this book just got very repetitive with having like the same exact scenes over and over and over again. They're trying to call 911, but they can't get service. They're trying to flag down other cars, but nobody else seems to be able to help. They're trying to get off the road, but they can't. It's just a lot of very repetitive scenes over and over again. I also just got really annoyed with the writing style in general in this book, because I thought the main character was like really annoying and also kind of a D-bag. I mean, I don't know how many times she had to bring up the fact that she loved reading these like choose your own adventure books as a kid, and the way she keeps saying like, whenever you're in a dangerous situation like this, like every single decision matters. And so every single time she has to like make a decision in this book, she like references that again. She'll be like, flip to this page for this and then flip to that page for that. What am I gonna do? Like, anytime there's like a tricky situation, she just has to bring up the choose your own adventure thing. It was just so annoying. But then also, I kind of think this character is a little bit of a D-bag because of the way she thinks. Like, listen to this one quote when she says, "I'd always thought of myself as a true crime junkie, but it turned out that was only when it happened to other people." Like, yeah, okay, Liv. Like, we get it. You're fascinated by other people's traumas, but God forbid if it happens to you, you're not into it. It was just such an insensitive thing to say when you're like in the middle of this experience. Like, oh, I only like true crime when I'm the one reading about it. Like, yeah, you and the rest of the world. And then I also feel like she was kind of a D-bag because there's this moment where you're hearing about like these really awful things that happened, and it's just like trauma after trauma after trauma. And then she literally interrupts the person who's talking and goes, "What does that have to do with me?" Like, yeah, I get it, Liv, but also like, damn, she's just, I don't know, the way she would speak, it would come across as like so insensitive and like very self-centered sometimes. It just really didn't work for me, and it's so wild because I keep seeing people on Goodreads, when they review this book, they describe it as being like action-packed and like so fast-paced, but I actually found the book to be so boring, and I think it's mostly because like I didn't really care about either of these characters. I feel like the entire book is just this non-stop action thrill ride, but it's about people that I don't feel like I know who they are. Like, I don't feel like I know these characters at all. I feel like this entire book reminded me of the opening scene in You'll Never Know, because when I was starting this book, I was like, oh shit, like it's kind of similar, like there's like a weird truck or like a van and like something's going on. But I feel like You'll Never Know is a book that I would recommend 1,000,000 times over Run on Red, because I feel like in Run on Red, nothing ever happens, and like the plot twists felt very obvious to me, if we can even call them plot twists. Whereas I feel like with this book, You'll Never Know, it starts off with this really intense opening chapter, and it is a non-stop action thrill ride, but I feel like this book just has so much more depth to it, you know, like you get more perspectives, you get more layers, you get timelines and like backstories, whereas like in this book, you really get nothing. So anyway, I feel like Run on Red has to be a 2-star for me, and I know that we're not starting off this video very well.
The summer came for us and showed us what we lost. I'm writing to myself about the things you said, about the things you said. The slowness creeps towards my feet within the light the morning brings to clean.
It's now about 4:30 in the afternoon. My dad ended up making some potato soup a little bit earlier today for my mom, and I had some for lunch and it was so good. And then I did end up taking a walk because it's been raining almost all day. And then finally around 4 o'clock, the rain let up a little bit, enough for me to go out on a walk. And now it's looking like it's gonna rain again, so I think I just avoided the rain. But I do have a reading update because I'm now about 50% of the way through The Future Saints by Ashley Winstead. I'm exactly 170 pages in. And I am listening to this one on audio, by the way. I was able to get it checked out from the library. This is one that I've been really curious to read just because I do love Ashley Winstead as a writer. And I love that Ashley Winstead is an author that writes in like so many different genres, because I feel like she's published a lot of thriller books and a lot of romance books. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is her first venture into like literary fiction, even though I did check on Goodreads actually, and the first genre listed on Goodreads is actually romance, which now that I'm halfway through the book, I'm kind of surprised by that, to be honest, because I do think this reads a little bit more like literary fiction. We're following this character named Theo, and it says that he's a record executive, and he gets assigned this job with this band that's called the Saints. His job is basically to squeeze one more good album out of this band, and the lead singer and the lead guitarist of this band is this woman named Hannah. There's two other guys in the band, but the story's primarily about Hannah. Sorry, I was trying to read the premise because I want to make sure that I don't spoil anything when I'm talking about this, because I feel like this book is not exactly what I was expecting it to be, but like almost in a good way. You know, naturally, because this book is involving a band, it really is reminding me of a lot of things that I've read or seen before. I mean, it's definitely reminding me a lot of, you know, like Daisy Jones and the Six, and The Favorites by Lane Fargo, and the final revival of Opal and Nev. Like, it definitely has those kind of vibes, but it's also reminding me of like Almost Famous, the movie, especially because we do get the perspective of this guy who's like outside of the band and he's like trying to help them improve. So it definitely reminds me of Almost Famous in that way. And then it also does remind me a little bit of Deep Cuts, which is like one of my favorite books. And I think it mainly reminds me of Deep Cuts because we do get a lot of scenes in this book where they are songwriting, and I like to see the songwriting process like as it's happening, because I've been writing songs since I was a kid, and I used to love writing music when I was in high school. And because I've always been so fascinated by songwriting, I do love seeing the actual scenes where they're writing songs together. And I think something that I'm really loving about this book is the sister relationship that's being explored between Hannah and her sister Ginny. And this book is also dealing with so much grief, because Hannah, the lead singer of this group, she is dealing with a lot of grief because their previous manager has recently passed away unexpectedly. And so the way that this book has been talking about grief has been very heavy and very hard-hitting. And I think it's only because Hannah is going through that grief that she kind of like decides to change the sound of their music. And because of that, they end up going viral. And so this is kind of the story about how they're starting to go viral because of these songs that she's writing as she's dealing with her grief. And I think this book is asking a lot of really interesting questions. Like the way it's being explored, like, would your band be as popular as it is if it wasn't for the hard things that you've gone through? I do like that we're getting mostly Theo's perspective and Hannah's perspective, but then in between the chapters, we do get some chapters that are like interview clips from like 10 years ago where we get to talk to all of the different band members. It's very Daisy Jones and the Six in that way. I think what makes this book kind of different though from the other ones that I've read about rock bands is that this one's taking place in the year of 2024, so it's like present day, which is weird because I feel like most of the music books like this that I've read are taking place in like the 70s or the 80s or even the 90s, and like Deep Cuts was like early 2000s, so it feels kind of weird to be reading about a rock band that's like in present day, and it feels weird to be reading about like the internet culture in the present day. It just feels kind of strange. Like I feel like this is the kind of story that it makes more sense in my brain for it to have been in the past. And you know, something I've realized about myself is that anytime we have a book like this that's kind of like literary fiction where we're following a band, most of the time it ends up being just okay for me. Like all those books I mentioned earlier, like Daisy Jones and the Six and The Favorites, like both of those books are really, really popular books that I only ended up giving 3 stars. And with this one, I'm kind of feeling similar. Like this book feels like it's going to be anywhere between like 3 and 4 stars for me. I don't know how to explain it, but it just feels like it's missing that extra something for me to be like really obsessed with it. Even though there are a lot of things in this story that I'm really loving, but I'm not as obsessed with this as I was hoping to feel. So I don't know, we'll see. I mean, I definitely do want to finish this book, so the rest will be determined later. I don't know if I'm going to read any more for the rest of the night. I might save the second half of this book for tomorrow. All I know is that for dinner, I'm going to be making my pork rice bowls with my dad, and I'll check back in when I have my final thoughts on this one.
My mind is weak, the lows are deep. I fall into the refuge that is sleep. There's nothing in my view but images of you 1,000 times.
Hi, hello. It is now the next afternoon and I wanted to update you because I have finished reading The Future Saints. Last night I didn't end up doing any more reading before bed. I actually ended up watching this movie that was called The Threesome. This one's on Netflix. And this movie was really good. It wasn't what I was expecting, to be honest, because I was just expecting like a fun rom-com. This movie actually ended up being a little bit more of like a romantic drama. It has Zoe Dutch in the movie, which is like one of my faves. And I just had a really good time with it. I was actually really surprised oftentimes by like the plot of this movie. It just went in a place where I wasn't expecting. And overall, I'm so bummed to let you know that like this book was just fine. I didn't really love it. I don't know if anybody's surprised that I'm probably gonna give this like 3 stars. This book started off promising enough. Like I was really enjoying the beginning, and I actually think the strongest part of this book for me was like the first 100 pages. I think this story had all of the potential for me to love it, and it's really hard to critique this book because like on paper, it does seem like a book that I should really enjoy. So I don't know why there was some kind of disconnect with me in this book. I think it's mostly because like I just didn't really care about the characters, and maybe I just felt like they weren't really well fleshed out. Like I never really felt like I knew Hannah as a person. And I think the second half of this book especially just really made me like lose interest a lot. I mean, you know, it's a bad sign when like last night, I could have easily finished this book last night, but I was like, I don't want to read any more of it today. And I feel like that's a bad sign when I like push off the last 150 pages for the next day. I keep seeing a lot of people saying that this book was really emotional and really hard hitting. And I can definitely see why people are saying that, you know, because so much of the story revolves around this grief, especially with our main character, Hannah. Like she is dealing with a lot of grief in this book, and it's very heavy at times. I mean, there were a few lines that I was like, damn, like that's really beautifully written, or like that was really perfectly said about the way that grief just like completely alters your life. And I think the grief was written really well. I just never felt that connected to her as a character. There was also a romance in this book that I also just didn't really care for, to be honest. Like I just felt so disconnected from the romance and everything that was happening. And I actually feel like too, by the end of this book, everything that you think is gonna happen at the end of this book does happen. And because I wasn't caring as much about the characters, it almost made me want to like skim a little bit at the end, because I was like, okay, very predictable in the end. I just can't help but feel a little bit underwhelmed by this. I think I'm gonna give this 3 stars. I mean, maybe even like a 2.5 stars if I'm being like super critical. I don't think it was a bad book. I just don't think it was my perfect book. You know, I want to love Ashley Winstead's books so bad, because the only one that I've loved is In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. That book was 5 stars for me. But I feel like ever since that book, I've really struggled with a lot of Ashley Winstead's books, even though I always want to give them a chance. But anyway, I just pulled up at the library because I do have a few different library holds that I need to pick up today. And I brought the book The Elsewhere Express with me because this is going to be my next read, hopefully. I know my library has a bunch of little tables over there, so I'll go and see if anybody's sitting over there so that maybe I can read outdoors today, because it's actually a really nice day. It's like 55 degrees. I know this is like the warmest February that we've ever had in Washington. I swear, why is it so warm? I don't know what's going on, but I really want to take advantage of it and get outside today.
I've been away for a while. No one can change time. How could I?
Hi, it's about an hour later. I've actually never sat in that park before. It's like right around the corner from my library, and it was really nice because nobody else was out there. But I wanted to update you because I got 110 pages into the Elsewhere Express. I think this one's gonna be a DNF for me. I'm really not vibing with this. You know, I was a little bit nervous going into this one because it's from the same author as Watermoon, which is another one that I just didn't really care for. I keep wanting to give this author a chance because the premise of her books sound so good, and the cover is just so beautiful. Like the amount of effort that they put into these books is actually unreal. Like this is stunning. The amount of detail they put into these sprayed edges, like, are you kidding me? That is beautiful. And I really thought that this one was gonna work for me because the premise sounded so cool. This one's honestly reading like very similar to Watermoon because it says the Elsewhere Express is only appearing to those whose lives are adrift. So it's like a magical train that you only see when you need to see it. And if that sounds familiar, it's because that's a very similar premise to Watermoon as well. So our main character that we're following is this girl named Rhea in this book. And it says she had dreamed dreamed of being a songwriter, but when her brother died, she gave up on her dream and started living his instead. And then we also follow this character named Q, and he is losing his eyesight. I know this sounds weird to say, but this one is actually reminding me a little bit too much of The Future Saints, like the book that I just finished reading today. Maybe it's because of the songwriter thing and like the character dealing with a lot of grief, but like some of the same themes are happening in this book, and I was like, I feel like I just read this. But also, I think the main reason why I'm just not really vibing with this one is because the writing is already starting to feel really repetitive. I mean, not only because this book does feel very similar to Watermoon in a lot of ways, also because of the writing style itself. Like every time you get to a new chapter, it'll be like, here's your itinerary for the Elsewhere Express. And every single chapter in this book starts with a question that's like a frequently asked question. It'll say, what are the dining options on the Elsewhere Express? And then the audiobook will say, frequently asked questions, the Elsewhere Express passenger handbook. And it repeats it like every single time at the start of the chapter. It's just a little bit annoying. And I also think even though the idea of the Elsewhere Express is really cool, I love stories like this about magical trains and like the idea of daydreams or even like alternate realities. Like I love that so much. This one's definitely leaning a bit more fantasy. It's not so much like alternate reality. It's almost like taking them to like dream worlds. I don't know if I'm fully understanding it, to be honest. I think it's going a little bit over my head because I'm just not that interested in this. I don't know if it's like a hot take to say because these books are so beautiful. You know, like this book and Watermoon are two of the most beautiful books I've ever seen in my life, but it almost feels like there's more effort going into making these books so stunning as opposed to the quality of the story that's within the pages. I don't know if it's just me. Maybe a lot of other people are really loving these books because I'm not a big fantasy reader, so I'm definitely not the target audience for this, but it still sucks that I don't vibe with them because I want them to stay on my bookshelves forever because it's beautiful. Because I'm DNFing that one, I'm gonna go with my other pick for this bingo prompt, which is gonna be The Half His Age by Jeanette McCurdy. I feel so stupid that I didn't bring the book with me because I could have been reading Out in the Sun a little bit longer today, but I'm gonna head back to the house so I can read that book this afternoon. I do think that book is gonna be a little bit more up my alley, even though I've heard this one is a little bit controversial, but I really want to read it because it's Jeanette McCurdy and I really liked her memoir a lot. So let's head back to the house so I can read that one instead.
Why I got my demons on a shelf, like the trophies I can carry with me through the years. Yeah, I'm too sick of myself. I'm too sick of myself.
Okay, hello, I am back home, and I'm happy to report that I have just finished reading Half His Age by Jeanette McCurdy. This book is about 270 pages, but I feel like it was such a quick read. The chapters were so short and so easy to get through, and I can definitely see why this book has been a controversial one because, wow, I don't even really know how I feel about this. I'm still trying to process what I just read. In this story, we're following this young girl named Waldo, and she is 17 years old, and this is a story about how she is actively sexually pursuing her teacher, who is this guy that is like near 40 years old, I want to say, and he's balding and he has a wife, and she is just relentlessly pursuing him in this book. It's really interesting to read from Waldo's perspective because she's not exactly the most likable character. I mean, I know I see some people on Goodreads going as far as to say like she's not the victim in this situation because she's the one actively pursuing the relationship, which I don't think is necessarily true to say because she's still 17 years old, you know, like she's not even able to consent to this relationship because she's so young. And I feel like this book definitely had a lot to say about, you know, like the different power dynamics that exist in a relationship like this. You know, this guy is her English teacher and she's only interested in writing and like in English because she wants to get his attention. And the overall tone of this book is just really sad. Like it really just made me want to give this young girl a hug and like maybe some advice because clearly this character was just going through it the whole book. It says on the inside that this is a sad, funny, thrilling novel about sex, consumerism, class desire, loneliness, the internet, rage, intimacy, power, and the oftentimes misguided lengths we'll go to in order to get what we want. And that feels about right because I do think there was also a lot of commentary about what it's like to be a young person in today's age where you have so much access at your fingertips with like the internet and TikTok. And I really do feel for Gen Z because I feel like even when I went to high school, you know, like I'm a millennial, I graduated in 2013. I feel like that era of time was just so different. You know, like the pressures of social media were not as intense as they are today. TikTok wasn't even a thing when I was in high school, you know? And so I really do feel for Gen Z because I can't imagine the amount of pressure that kids are feeling today. And I do think this book does a really great job of like showing the unique struggles that teenagers face today. But I also do think that this book was very icky and very uncomfortable to read, and I think that was the intent. There were so many graphic sex scenes and it was all very vulgar and like over the top, and some of them just did not feel necessary in my opinion. Like there was especially this one that involved her period blood. Jesus Christ, if you know, you know. And it was just a little bit bit too much for me, and it honestly just felt like it was only added to this book to have, you know, shock value, which it definitely did have shock value. I appreciate what this book was trying to say, and I do think in a lot of ways, like, I could see how this would be very therapeutic to write for Jeanette McCurdy. I've seen some clips and some interviews of her talking about this book, and it really does seem like it was such a personal, therapeutic thing for her to be able to write this story. I just don't know if this is one that I really enjoyed personally, because even by the end of the book, like by the time it said acknowledgements, I was like, oh wait, like that's it? Like that's where it ends? And I don't really feel like I got much out of this. I know a lot of people are probably going to want to compare this book to My Dark Vanessa, which I would definitely see the comparison of like a young girl getting sexually involved with her teacher. But at least in my opinion, I think My Dark Vanessa was a little bit more impactful than this one was. I think it's probably going to be a 3-star for me. I don't know. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. I mostly just felt icky and confused like the entire time I was reading this. I will say though, Jeanette McCurdy is such an incredible writer because I was hooked from beginning to end. Like I did not want to put this down. So it definitely has that like readability to it. And I was just so curious to see where this story was going. So like it definitely had that going for it. And I'll definitely be reading more books from Jeanette McCurdy in the future because I do think she's such a talented writer. I don't know, Phoenix, what do you have to say about it? Phoenix has many thoughts about this one too. She told me she's a little camera shy. Anyway, it is just after 4 o'clock in the afternoon at this point. I'm not too sure what I want to do for dinner tonight. Part of me really wants to go to the taco truck and get those quesadilla tacos because it's been a minute and I've been craving them so badly. So I might do that. And then also me and my mom are probably going to jump back into Supernatural season 7 tonight. My mom's actually doing really well considering the fact that she had wisdom tooth surgery yesterday. I was worried for her, you know, because when I had wisdom tooth surgery a few years ago, it was like some of the worst pain that I've ever felt in my life. And I was roughing it for about a week. Like I was in so much pain, but my mom seems to be doing really well actually today. So I can't wait to jump back into Supernatural tonight. Hello, good morning. It is now the next day. I just drove down to my local park and there is nobody here. Like not a single soul is here at this park. When I pulled up, I was like, is the park closed today? Like why is nobody else here? But anyway, last night ended up being a really great night because yes, I did go to the taco truck and I got my quesadilla tacos and like they were so good. And then I did end up watching 4 more episodes of season 7 of Supernatural with my mom. And you know, after we watched episode 2, I realized something about this season that made me very upset. And I was like doing some research and doing some Googling to see if I was correct. And if you know, you know, but basically like there's a certain character that's like not going to be on this season apparently. And I was so shocked to my core. Like this was not the direction that I was expecting season 7 to go. Oh, okay, of course, as soon as I say that, the people start rolling up. I should not have taken for granted having the park to myself. But anyway, I do have a reading update because this morning I have started reading Kiss Me Maybe. I'm only 86 pages into this one and I just hit chapter 10. Holy shit, the way that I'm already feeling so seen by this main character. I'm terrified. I'm kind of terrified to read this today. The amount of things that I have in common already with this main character is kind of crazy. Something that this character talks about right off the bat is that she is 27 years old and she's never been in a relationship, which like, hello, yeah, that's me, but I'm now 31 years old and I've also never been in a relationship, never desired one. And then Angela starts talking about the fact that she's asexual, but she also really talks about how like it was so hard for her to figure that out about herself because she's such a huge lover of romance and she really enjoys reading and watching romance and she likes reading smut and she doesn't understand how she can enjoy those things but not want them for herself. And I was like, whoa, Angela, whoa, take it easy. I feel like Angela's coming for my throat with this and I'm in danger of being seen. Another thing that I have in common with her is that she's like posting videos on the internet. I mean, in this particular, you know, story, she's a TikToker and she has this TikTok that goes really viral. So like we're a little bit of a difference there, you know, because I'm on YouTube, she's on TikTok. Wow, why are there so many people now coming down here? Did I send out the bat signal? Like what is going on? But the thing about this book that feels a little bit silly right now in the plot is that it says she proposes an online scavenger hunt to find the right woman to share her first kiss. So she's basically like using her TikTok and like the TikTok that's gone viral. She's like using that as an opportunity to make this scavenger hunt. And the reward at the end of the scavenger hunt for whoever can figure it out is going to be to have her first kiss. I mean, I do think the idea of like posting an online scavenger hunt to have her first kiss, like it does feel a little bit cheesy in that way. And the love interest in this book is actually this other woman that she knows named Crystal, who's a bartender. And she's the bartender at this local bar that she frequents all the time. time. So like, I think that's really cute. I feel like it's going to be a bit of a slow burn between them, but I had a feeling that I was going to love this book when like only on the 3rd chapter, she starts to write this response to this comment about how I realized I'm an asexual lesbian. And right off the bat, she mentions the book Loveless by Alice Oseman. She says, I read a passage in Loveless by Alice Oseman that echoed the same thought. For me, what that means is I've never been actively turned on by another person, even someone I've had a crush on, or had sexual fantasies that include me in them. But I have had fantasies and I do have a sex drive. It's just not activated by a desire to have sex with a specific person. I'm like, holy shit. I was like, whoa, because I mean, if you know me, Loveless by Alice Oseman is like one of my top favorite books of all time. And I actually do have a reading vlog from when I read that book back in the day, and I was just like sobbing the entire time I was reading the book because I have never felt more seen by a main character in a story. And so the fact that she just mentioned Loveless right off the bat, I was like, oh god, this is gonna hit me so hard. And then another passage in this that I also really loved that talked about asexuality is when she says, being asexual doesn't mean I'm repulsed or even averse to the idea of sex. Sex, at least in the abstract, has always been something that interests me, which is part of what made figuring out my identity even harder. It's just that when I fantasize about sex, I never imagine myself in that way. The bodies I imagine are usually nameless and faceless. Once after a weekend binge of One Tree Hill, Sophia Bush made a cameo. You know, I know asexuality is like a spectrum and that everybody experiences it in different ways, but I'm like, holy shit, the way that I'm feeling so seen by the way that this specific character is. I feel like another thing that I have in common with this main character is like the big Mexican family, because almost every single one of the characters in this book is Mexican. And if you didn't know me, I am a quarter Mexican, but like my grandma is from Tijuana, Mexico. And you know, I grew up in California with like a really big Mexican side of the family on my dad's side. So I just feel very comforted by the Mexican culture because it's what I'm used to, like it's what I grew up with. I relate to so many things happening in this book that I'm completely overwhelmed. I mean, not only that, but the fact that the author's name is literally Gabriella Gamez, like what? Not only is she a Gabriella, but she's also a double G. I'm really loving this book, and I'm so glad that I discovered this book just with doing this video. Like, I don't think I would have ever heard of this book otherwise. And so I just drove down here to the park today. I thought it would be a really nice day to just kind of like walk around in the park, listen to this one on audio, maybe shed a little tear. I also did make a little iced coffee before I left the house, and I put it in this tiny, cute little yellow tumbler thing. Is it not adorable? This one's my mom's. It's so cute. But anyway, I'm gonna continue reading this one, and I will let you know my thoughts. It is now nearly 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm not finished with the book. I'm actually about like 270 pages into it, so I only have about 100 pages left, but I really wanted to update you because I am just loving this book so freaking much. You know, I was actually kind of surprised because when I just pulled up the Goodreads page, I noticed that this book only has 2,000 ratings, so like not a lot of people have read this one, but also that this book has like a 3.5 out of 5 average on Goodreads, which was really shocking to me. I don't really understand why this book is getting such low reviews on Goodreads because this feels like it's going to be a 5-star for me. I mean, I know I still have 100 pages left, but like I would be surprised if I didn't give this book 5 stars. And I think that's mainly because of the asexual representation in this book. It literally means the world to me. But I love that this book has an asexual character who is still trying to figure out her identity, and she's still exploring and experimenting. You know, she has this crush on this girl, Crystal, who's this bartender, and she's starting to feel some kind of sexual attraction towards her, and she's navigating her feelings and her emotions. And I will say that for a book that involves an asexual character, there actually is a lot of sex in this book, and there is a lot of smut as she's trying to figure out, you know, like how she feels. And I love the discussion in this book about how asexuality is like such a spectrum, and how maybe something that you identified more with like 5 years ago, like maybe that's not true for you anymore, and how sexuality is so fluid and it can change over time. I also love the conversations about how sometimes people view asexuality as like not being queer enough, and so you don't feel accepted in those communities either. And you know, my heart was just breaking for this main character, you know, because she's talking a lot about how she doesn't have any friends, like she doesn't have anybody in her life who's asexual, and she's always feeling so alone and like so misunderstood. And it really like makes me think back, you know, on my life, because I remember back in 2020 when I was still like figuring things out, and that's when I read Loveless by Alice Oseman. And at that time in my life, like I also didn't really know anybody in real life who was asexual. And I feel like ever since that period of my life, I've been so lucky that now I have so many friends who are asexual and have made me feel so seen and so understood. And I no longer feel any shame or like judgment about it. And I feel like this book is making me do a lot of reflecting on like my own experiences, especially because I also relate to this character because she's talking about how she's like the only single person left in her entire family with like her siblings and her cousins. And like that's the same way for me, you know, like I'm also the only single person left. And you know, I feel like when I was a little bit younger, that's something that probably would have bothered me or made me feel like I was different or like something was wrong with me. But like now that I'm 31 years old, I feel like I've gotten to a point of self-acceptance like so much that like I literally don't care because I know that that's not the lifestyle for me. Like it doesn't bother me anymore that I don't have a romantic partner because I know that that's not what I want. And it wasn't easy to get here. I feel like I used to be so insecure about these things, but now, I mean, I guess it is kind of true when they say like when you hit your 30s, you just stop giving a fuck. And I think that's kind of true. I feel like ever since I've gotten a little bit older, I've just really come to like accept myself for who I am. And I think reading this story is like helping me to like recognize those things about myself. I also love the way that this book is talking about friendship too, you know, because friendships can be a lot more meaningful to asexual people. But I love how she says, friend feels too small a word for someone you love, even if it's not romantic love. And I love how they talk about how society doesn't value strong friendships in place of romantic relationships. And I think that's very true. Reading some of these passages from this character is reminding me a lot of how I used to feel like maybe like 5 years ago when she says, I've tried to tell myself I don't need a partner. I don't need romance or sex or any of the bullshit I've been programmed my whole goddamn life to think I need because it's what everyone else wants for themselves. Like maybe it makes me less ace to want all of that for myself too, what my parents have. I guess I'm just sick of being left behind all the time, you know? It's lonely not being able to relate to anyone. Like maybe there's something wrong with me even though I know that's not true, but it's hard to believe when I don't have anyone in my life to relate to. Like damn if that doesn't hit close to home. So I'm just really loving this book so much. And I'm loving this book for so many reasons. I mean, don't get me wrong, the whole scavenger hunt thing to have her first kiss, I think is a really like cheesy aspect of the book, but I'm actually kind of relieved that that's not the majority of the story. Like we do keep coming back to it, but like there's so much more happening in the story than just this cheesy scavenger hunt. I feel like it's more about this character, you know, figuring out her own sexuality. I will say my one nitpicky thing about this is that it does feel like this character is very obsessed with trying to find a label for herself, which I don't think is a bad thing, you know, but she is constantly questioning and like having these thoughts of like, am I more demisexual? Am I more gray sexual? And there's like all different kinds of, you know, micro labels under asexual, you know, because asexual is like a big umbrella term. And so she's constantly, you know, having these almost like obsessive thoughts about which label she fits under. And so I can see how that can become like a little bit repetitive, but I also don't mind it because I love reading books about a character kind of like exploring their sexuality and like learning more about themselves. I'm also just kind of loving how realistic this relationship feels to me between these two women and the way that they're navigating things with each other and like learning more about each other's past. Like sometimes it can be a little bit messy, but it honestly just feels so real. And so I'm absolutely loving this. Oh my God, like it made me misty-eyed. Like I got tears in my eyeballs a few times while I was reading this. And it was such a lovely day just like walking around the park reading this book. I think I'm gonna head back to the house right now and just finish up this last, you know, 100 pages of the book. I would be shocked at this point if this is not 5 stars. Okay, hi, it's nearly 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but I wanted to update you because I just finished reading Kiss Me Maybe, and I think I have to give this book 5 stars. I mean, if I was trying to like pull apart all the little like tiny little things that I had with this book, it would probably be closer to like a 4 or like a 4.5 stars, but I think I have to give this 5 stars just because of the way this book made me feel. I mean, you know it's good when I'm like tabbing a library book like this, and I think I want to try to order this book off of Pango because of how much I just loved it, and clearly I was like wanting to annotate it even though it's a library book, but I just think this book meant absolutely everything for me to read today. And I do think that if you are someone who's asexual and you're struggling with that, I really think this would be such a great book to read. I actually didn't even realize that this is the second book in a series from this author, so I didn't know about that, so I'm gonna have to check out the first book as well because I really like this author's writing style so much. I was looking on Goodreads and I saw that a lot of the negative reviews about this book were mainly about this main character, Angela. I saw a lot of people saying that this reads really young, almost like young adult, which I can see, but I would kind of disagree with. And then I also saw people saying that Angela just in general was like a very annoying character to follow, which I can also definitely see. And I think that's mainly because of the like TikTok thing and the like scavenger hunt for her first kiss. Like some of it can feel a little bit ridiculous in that way. So I see where people are coming from with the critiques, but like for me, this just really worked for me and I really loved it so much. I also loved like the sapphic relationship throughout this book. I thought was really beautiful and really well done. And I also loved the talk about, you know, not only being asexual, but what it's like to be online and be asexual. asexual, and like the weird ass comments that you'll get from like random men sometimes, where they'll try to be like, oh, you just haven't met the right man yet, or like, oh, you're just missing out on your youthful experience of sex by being asexual, or just like really weird out of pocket comments. It was all very relatable to me because, you know, you'll get those comments that are like, oh, there's no way she's telling the truth, she just wants attention. I do get comments like that about my asexuality, and I've had these weird out of pocket comments from so many men over the years, so I 100% get where she's coming from, and I feel like this was handled in a very realistic way. And so I'm giving this book 5 stars because I really connected to this main character today, and I loved the way that this book talked about asexuality, and I can't believe I found a 5-star in this video for a book that I've never heard of before doing this video. Anyway, as I mentioned, it's nearly 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I actually have some Patreon reading sprints scheduled for 3 o'clock right now, so I know that I just finished reading this book, but I do have more plans to read throughout the night. The only book that I have left to read for this video is How to Kill a Guy in 10 Dates, and I've been really excited to read this one. I've actually been like saving the best for last potentially because I wanted to end this video on a positive note, so like hopefully I do end up loving this one as much as I hope I will. So I'm gonna start on this one tonight, and I can't wait. Oh my god, I hope it goes so well. Hi, it is just after 6 o'clock at night, but I wanted to update you because I've been reading How to Kill a Guy in 10 Dates. Now about 120 pages into this. I just hit chapter 14, and I am loving this so much. Like, it feels like we might have another 5-star book on our hands. This is everything and more with what I was hoping this book would be. The reason why I was really excited to read this one is because it's a horror and a romance book all in one, and I feel like I've been talking about that this year, how like I just love books that combine horror and romance, and I need more of it in my life. And after being like 120 pages in, the romance in this book is actually so good, and it's a lot more heavy on the romance than I was anticipating, which is a good thing. But what I'm loving about this story is that we're following this protagonist named Jamie, and she is a really big cinephile. She's a really big fan of movies, and she particularly loves the genres of rom-coms and slashers. And at the start of this book, she's actually writing this article about, you know, like the similarities between rom-coms and slashers. And so the premise of the book is that Jamie and her best friend Lori, they're gonna be going to this like speed dating event that's in New York City, where basically they put on a timer and they each get 10 minutes with 10 different men. And then while they're at this event, Jamie's talking to this guy that's like a real douchebag, like he's like a real asshole, and then the power goes out for a few seconds and it's complete darkness. And then like a minute later, when the power comes back on, Jamie realizes that her date, his throat is cut, and there's a few people in the dating room. I think there's 4 people that died right away. And so then this kind of becomes a situation almost like a slasher movie where like people are dying, they're trying to figure out how to get out together. I loved right at the start of this book how it starts with a list for how to survive a slasher, and she has her list of all the typical rules for like how to survive a slasher situation. I also love too that the beginning of this includes a map, and I love the details where like at the start of every chapter there's a quote from a romance movie, but it's like tweaked so that it sounds more horror. Like for example, there's one from The Notebook where it says, "The best kill is the kind that awakens the soul," because they replaced the word love with kill. And then the chapter that I just got to, oh my god, there's a quote from Brokeback Mountain, and it says, "I wish I knew how to slit you." Oh my god, that's hilarious. I love Brokeback Mountain. Like that's one of my favorite quotes, that I wish I knew how to quit you. So I think that's absolutely hilarious. And I kind of love the way that the romance is being written in this book, because right before the murders happen, she meets these 2 different guys on the speed dating. She meets this one guy, Wes, and Wes is like really tall and kind of like broody, and he just has this like attitude about him, and she like brings up murder to him, and he gets really awkward and like wants to move on from her very fast, which was really funny. But then there's this other guy named John, and he's like a little bit more like reserved, he's a little bit more quiet, but it's almost feeling like it's kind of like setting up a love triangle dynamic between the 3 of them, because it seems like both of the guys are very interested in her, and it's so good. And I'm like almost like kicking my feet over the romance because I think it's so cute. I mean, I'm actually preferring Wes with her. Like I feel like Wes has really good chemistry with her, and I'm actually dying over the fact that their names are Jamie and Wes, because if you know, one of my favorite books of all time, Him by Serena Bowen and Elle Kennedy, that book is like my favorite male gay hockey romance that I've ever read in my life, and the characters in that book are Jamie and Wes. And so the fact that I'm shipping another Jamie and Wes, like what are the chances faces. That's hilarious. But I'm just loving the voice in this book so much. Like, I feel like there's already been so many scenes that have made me like want to laugh out loud. Like the amount of times that I've underlined something and put LOL. I love her knowledge about films in general and the way that she keeps referencing all these iconic horror films and all these iconic rom-coms. This book really does feel like it has like the perfect balance of romantic comedy and slasher. Oh, I'm just loving it so much. It's really reminding me a lot of like Finlay Donovan is Killing It. Like it kind of has that vibe to it. And it also is reminding me a lot of Love Letters to a Serial Killer, which is another book that I read last year, I think, that I really, really loved. And so I'm just having the best time with this so far. I can't believe I'm reading another book that feels like it's going to be a 5-star. Like, is this too good to be true? I'm going to continue finishing up my Patreon reading sprints tonight. I only have about 20 minutes left of this sprint. And then I do think later tonight, me and my mom are going to try to watch a little bit more of Supernatural season 7. I might have to save the rest of it for tomorrow, but I will update you with my final thoughts once I finish.
I'm getting tired of sleeping. Think I've had enough. I've been gone but haven't done much healing. It's pretty clear to me. Kinda strange how I can take a beating from my better self. It's like no one else even breathes.
Okay, hi, hello. I wanted to check in because it is now the next night and I have finished reading How to Kill a Guy in 10 Dates. I didn't actually end up reading anything more last night because I was so tired. So I wasn't reading last night, and then this morning I ended up filming this video and then editing this video, and I went to the gym. I also watched a bit more of season 7 of Supernatural with my mom, and I definitely cried in the mid-season finale. How could they do this to me? I'm a little bit salty about it, you know? Season 7 has not been my favorite season of Supernatural. But anyway, I just finished reading this book and I really love this one so much. I don't know if it was the perfect 5-star read for me. I actually think I'm probably going to give this one around 4 stars. And that was for a few different reasons, but I do think this book was so good and so funny and impressive, especially because this one is a debut. And I think this book really managed to balance the like rom-com vibes with the slasher vibes perfectly. I just really loved how self-aware this book was and how she would constantly talk about, well, like this is what typically happens in like the 3rd act or the 2nd act of a movie like this. And the way that she would constantly talk about the differences between rom-coms and slashers, but also a lot of the similarities between those two genres as well. And the romance in this book was actually so good. There was a moment that I had to annotate. It was on page 246 where I was like literally kicking my feet over them. Like I thought that they were so cute. And I guess I just wasn't expecting to like the romance in this book as much as I did. But I will say, as far as the romance goes, I do think there are some things that you're just gonna have to like suspend your disbelief. I feel like this is the same issue that I have with romantasy books, where like we're in the middle of like a really serious and high stakes kind of a situation and characters are over here just like making out. You know, it kind of reminded me of that vibe where you're like, oh really? Like now's the time where you're gonna be making out with each other? Oh, and I forgot to mention the audiobook was so good because not only is it like a full cast audiobook, I mean, you're only reading from the perspective of our main girl Jamie for the entire book, but it was really cool because anytime the other guys like talk to her, like anytime Wes has a line or anytime John has a line, it's a different male narrator saying their lines, which was really cool. And then also there's a lot of sound effects on this audiobook. Like anytime they hear like a woman screaming, there will be like a woman screaming on the audiobook, or if they hear like footsteps shuffling around, you'll actually hear the sounds on the audio. And even the like murdering sounds, like the noises with like the knife and the blood, like you can hear it on the audiobook. It was so cool. Honestly, one of the best audiobooks I've listened to in a long time. So I would highly recommend listening to this one on audio. It just really elevated the experience. I think the only reason why I hesitate to want to give this book the full 5 stars is because it did just start to feel a little bit long. I mean, this book is around like 350 pages, but I was just really starting to feel the length of this book in the second half. Like it was just starting to drag a little bit for me and I was ready for things to wrap up sooner. And then I also think as far as like the slasher elements of this book go, I do think it was a little bit predictable. And I don't know if that's just because like I'm very well versed in the slasher genre and I feel like I kind of know what to expect. But I think there were like a few, you know, like reveals at the end that were supposed to be shocking, but I personally found most of it to be very predictable. So I am kind of bummed that the ending didn't like completely knock my socks off. But at the same time, I love this book so much. And there was actually a moment towards the end of this book, like in the final intense scene in this book, where I was laughing my ass off. Like it was just so funny, so well written. And I'm so glad that I'm ending this video on a positive note. I'm also really excited that I'm going to be on a live show soon to discuss this book. My friend Kayla over from Books and Lala, this one's actually her Literally Dead book club pick for the month of February. And I'm going to be on the live show towards the end of this month talking about this book with her. So I will have the live show link down below if it's it's available, but I'm really looking forward to discussing this one because it was such a fun read, and I do feel like there's a lot for us to talk about with this one. Thank you so much for watching. I really do hope that you enjoy the bingo board series because this is going to be the first of 5 episodes. I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm already having a lot of fun with like trying to find books that fit into the prompts because there are definitely some prompts on this bingo board that are really going to push me outside of my comfort zone, especially as we get towards the bottom of the bingo board. But thank you so much for watching as always, and I'll see you very soon with another video. Bye!